Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick comparison between the Sony CyberShot RX100 Mark III on the left and the Panasonic Lumix LX100 on the right. These are two very similar cameras when it comes to pricing and performance. Only $100 separates them currently. The LX100 just launched. I unboxed that the other day, and I do have limited time right now with it, so I can't speak to as much experience as I'd like, and this comparison is really more about addressing questions that many of you may have if you're trying to pick between these two cameras. And quite frankly, when it comes to their position in the DI space, there's nothing else to compare them to. So let's start off with pricing, specifications, and then I'll give you at least my initial impressions in terms of what I think between these two cameras and which camera is right for who. The less expensive is the older Mark III. Now, when I say older, the Mark III launched in the summer, so this is not an old product at all. Only several months old, and I really did enjoy having it over the summer. It's something that, as far as I'm concerned, changed my photography for the summer, and that's because the Mark III integrates incredible features, whether we're talking about a fully articulating LCD screen, which is something for Sony that pretty much does not exist, forget in a compact form factor. You also got a built-in OLED viewfinder, which is best in class, quite frankly, only in class. You're not going to find this anywhere else. We got slightly faster glass, which is now, a definite improvement, but we did that at the expense of giving up some focal range. The lens went to 24 to 70, whereas before we had a reach of 100 millimeters. So they went for a wider angle, faster glass. Really not a complaint for me. This is still a wonder when it comes to what you can get inside a pocket with regard to still image quality. And then when you talk about video quality, you have XAVCS capability, Sony's latest and greatest, at least before you jump into the realm of 4K. In fact, that is the next step, hopefully, for the Mark IV, which will make it a even more unique pocket-friendly camera. A lot of manual controls here. You do have a built-in flash, as you can see right here. And again, at $799, while this may seem expensive, the 1-inch sensor that's inside this camera really does end up yielding some amazing photos when paired with the, as I said before, fast Carl Zeiss branded glass that's fixed on this camera. Metal construction, very good build quality. I would say average battery life. It's not amazing. Batteries aren't incredibly expensive. But again, you will be hard-pressed to find anything that will beat this camera. Wi-Fi and NFC, play memories, applications for all sorts of things from live video grading to time-lapse applications, really a whole host of interesting features. So Sony has built a really nice line of cameras in the RX100, I would say lineage. The one started it all, creating a complete new expectation for the pocket-friendly point-and-shoot camera, since for many, that entire market was dying altogether because of great smartphones with regard to their image quality and the fact that you always have your phone everywhere you go. But the RX100, and now the third generation you're looking at here, certainly is a testament to the fact that there is still a marketplace for a high-quality point-and-shoot camera without stepping up or into an interchangeable world. The LX100 is really a clear answer to the fact that Panasonic agreed with Sony. There are customers that do require better image quality without stepping up into interchangeable lens cameras, or maybe just having a backup. And so here, for $100 more, again $899, you're getting a very similar package, although definitely the first thing to notice is it is considerably larger. So that is the biggest compromise with the LX100. You're giving up the more pocket-friendly form factor that the RX100 Mark II and, of course, the Mark III I'm comparing it to right now offer out of the box. But the LX100 does have some inherent advantages also out of the box. You can see marketing right here for that 1.33-inch micro four thirds sensor. So the first thing Panasonic wants you to know is that even though Sony brags about the 1-inch sensor in the Mark III, the sensor inside the LX100 is larger. And there is definitely something to be said for having a larger sensor here. I mean, I own an RX1, which is a full-frame camera, and I'll be showing you a side-by-side with the LX100 in a moment, because that's what it reminds me of, more of a jacket pocket-friendly camera than a traditional pocket-friendly camera. But again, Panasonic trying to give even more than what Sony delivered with the RX100 series. And I give them a lot of credit because in many ways they do. So first and foremost, when it comes to still imaging, we have a very fast Leica branded piece of glass. So if you were going to have any other name other than Carl Zeiss, I think the two best names to have in the room, Panasonic and Sony have tapped them. It's also very similar in terms of its zoom range. We're looking at basically almost a wash. As I mentioned, the Sony is 24 to 70, whereas here with the Panasonic, you're getting 25 to 75. So very, very similar in terms of zoom range. And then when it comes to, again, the brightness, the speed of this lens, how fast the glass is, also very similar. But there is a crop factor to be taken into account for both. No question, when it comes to low light capability, the Lumix should have the nod between the larger sensor, the lower megapixel count, because by the way, this is going to give you 12 megapixel stills, at least for best imaging, even though this is a 16 megapixel sensor. And there's a lot more manual control here. This definitely looks and feels more like an enthusiast camera than the Mark III, and that in no way is a knock against the Mark III. I love it, but I mean, it's just clear. You have a larger body here, better ergonomics. I mean, I had to add the grip to the Mark III. You have 4K video, which I haven't even mentioned because after all, these are still cameras first. But when it comes to 4K video capture, this is the first compact camera to offer 4K video that I have to say is stunning. And don't worry, you'll be seeing samples soon. You also have the ability to control your aperture right here, no different than my RX1, which is something that I really enjoyed seeing. In the unboxing, I mentioned that it does make a clicking noise, which is not so desirable for smooth transitions in video, but still amazing in this form factor. Sony has been building on, a switch to eliminate the click. The FZ1000, a similar situation, so I'm not sure why they left that out here, but you can see they also have the ability, or have built in the ability, to give you creative flexibility with aspect ratio, which I really like. Now, this is not going to matter to everyone. This isn't something you're going to find with the Mark III, but on the fly, you can switch between 3x2, 16x9, 1x1, or 4x3, and this is going to give you different megapixel counts as well. So Panasonic really wanted to utilize this 16 megapixel micro four thirds sensor, which I will admittedly say is a little long in the tooth, as is the 1-inch sensor here. I'd really like to see aps-c start to make its way into compacts. Maybe I'm dreaming a little bit at present, but still, this is a step in the right direction, because all of a sudden we have a sensor that isn't that far from what you're finding in the GH4 inside a compact body, giving you 4K video at 30p, which is still just about as good as it gets from anything in this price realm, or even twice the price, even what I'm filming on right now. A lot of on-the-fly quick manual controls, again, not present on the Mark III. Zoom only here from the shutter button. The Mark III, you can control zoom on the actual focus ring or assign it to be focus, which is a nice flexibility that Sony builds in there. But I think it's really obvious that even though $100 separates these two cameras, and as I mentioned, they're very similar in terms of their performance, the LX100 is trying to cater to somebody that really in their heart, as much as they love the images and video they get out of the Mark III, feel that there is more to be had. And I agree in many ways. I mean, the 4K video element, having more manual controls, these are all things that speak to giving, I would say, legitimate competition to the Mark III. But the Mark III, at the end of the day, has that form factor that for the average consumer is going to win over, I would say, all of the features I've mentioned that I personally love that the LX100 has for, again, the average consumer. Even for someone looking for a B cam, I mean, if they don't care about 4K video or the ability to switch between all of these different aspect ratios and have the manual controls, the Mark III is going to win out every day, especially since another area that the Mark III is superior is the actual output, what you're seeing, whether you're looking through the EVF on board here or the 3-inch LCD. By the way, the LCD on the Mark III is also 3 inches, again, a testament to the size, or I should say the engineering of the Mark III. the output, what you're going to see is going to look better both on the viewfinder and display of the Sony device. So compromise a little bit there with regard to Panasonic. Both of these cameras are made in China. Surprising for Panasonic, considering all of their cameras have been made in Japan, really up until this one. The FZ1000 that I just reviewed, also made in Japan. You do have a hot shoe here, something that the Mark II had, but the RX100 Mark III lacks. But as I mentioned, you don't have a built-in flash. Of course, you won't need the flash with this as often because, again, this is going to perform better in low light. It not only has faster glass, but a larger sensor, with a lower megapixel count at that. But no self-articulating display here. You're not going to be able to take a self-portrait with this. No application store. This does have a time-lapse app on board for free. Wi-Fi and NFC are here, but Panasonic just hasn't developed all the gimmicks that Sony has. After all, they aren't quite as heavily vested in DI as Sony. But this really is a great camera. So at the end of the day, you know that you're getting great stills and great video from both of these. It's really a matter of whether or not you care about the actual pricing first and foremost, which you probably don't, considering they're so close in price already. By the way, the lens cap part of the Lumix is not something to love. Another nice part of the RX100 Mark III is having the integrated lens coverage when you power down. I mean, that's just simply an inherent advantage for any camera. But I think that the decision is going to be simple for most users. If you really desire all of the features that the LX100 has, then there's no other camera on the market like it, except for the Mark III. But the Mark III simply doesn't have the extra size when it comes to the sensor. It does not have a hot shoe for additional accessories. You know, it doesn't have as much focal range and as fast a piece of glass. Whether or not you prefer the Leica or Zeiss name, really a matter of personal preference. But what it does have, again, is that form factor, which may be the difference between this camera traveling with you. Now, for me personally, I'm going to recommend to just about everyone to pick up the Mark III, because not everyone is an advanced user that is going to want quick access to the ISO or to exposure compensation. They do want a traditional point and shoot that, if they have room to grow with their hobby, they'll be able to do that, and the Sony does provide it. The Lumix drops a bomb on it. I mean, if you want control, far more control here, more features, and the 4K video, to me, makes it a winner. I mean, I'm still amazed that we're looking at a camera that can capture 4K video with a zoom lens in not only this form, but under $1,000, in fact, $899. Now, I mentioned it's pocket-friendly. Not really, it's jacket-friendly. So let me bring in my RX1, because that's what I mentioned this camera really reminds me of. And as you look at it side by side, you can see that the RX1 is not that much larger. In fact, I think Panasonic in many ways took a play out of Sony's playbook, which they've been doing lately, because these are the only two companies that innovating in the DI business, folks. I mean, Sony, I think, has done most of it, but Panasonic has pushed the envelope by bringing out much more affordable options, in some instances, like the FZ1000, based on some of Sony's very own tech. But here we've got a full-frame camera that is a fixed lens, 35mm experience, no zoom. Of course, there's digital zoom on there, clear image. Video capture, we don't even have the XAVC-S that we have here. No Wi-Fi, no NFC, but when it comes to digital imaging, king of the hill in the point-and-shoot world. The LX100, though, tries to basically take a stab at what Sony did with the RX1, but make it affordable, make it practical, give us 4K video, and build in the viewfinder, something that the $2,800 RX1, you had to opt for a $500 or $450 optional EVF, even though it's still one of the best EVFs that I've ever used, and I still own it and love it. The fact remains that the budget in the real world for this sort of camera definitely favors what Panasonic has put together in the LX100. And that's because at $899, it's a lot, but again, when you compare it to what you might shell out on a Micro Four Thirds system, it begins to look like a bargain. And I can't tell you how many times I've had people ask me or tell me with complete confidence that the RX100 line approaches what aps-c cameras can do, at least without the best glass possible, and I could agree in many instances. And then when you add in the fact that you've got form factor far in its advantage, or far to its favor, because as we all know, the best camera is the one that you have with you, and when it happens to give you great stills and video, you've got a winner. And that's exactly what this camera does. I mean, incredibly fast glass, f1.8 to 2.8. Over here with the Lumix, also incredibly fast, as I mentioned before. You've got, I think it's f1.7 to 2.8 or something like that. I mean, these are just, again, crop factor taken into account, but still really fast glass for point and shoot cameras. But this is more of a jacket-friendly camera, and that's why I see it being, again, more of a half stab at the RX1. But pricing, and of course the fact that there is nothing else like it on the market, will inherently make the Mark III the direct target, at least for the average consumer to compare. But quite frankly, if you're looking for the imaging king of this segment, you are looking at it here. I mean, I mentioned before Sony building in the aperture ring. Of course, this clicks all the way around. You're dealing with metal. There is no switch here, but that's because this is a still imaging beast first. Control of focusing distance for macro, hot shoe, as I mentioned before. I mean, the build quality on this is I was going to say exceptional. It really is a piece of art when it comes to the DI world, and I don't think anyone will argue that. Fixed screen, I wish it articulated. I wish we had a built-in EVF. I wish we had Wi-Fi and NFC. Better battery wouldn't be a bad thing either, but the Carl Zeiss glass and sensor, that 24 megapixel full frame sensor, and also that silent shutter, that leaf shutter, really does make it still basically my favorite camera in my arsenal. It is the go anywhere. But the Mark III is that camera that, you know, I can fit in a small pocket, not a jacket pocket. And that's where, when I look at the LX100, I still personally am waiting to see Sony refresh the RX1 with 4K, or maybe the Mark IV with 4K, and that would be really where my money would be at, just because I own the RX1. Now, the average consumer walking in, I still think, as I said before, they're going to lean towards the Mark III, simply because despite all the features and customization and, in my opinion, better control that you're getting from the Panasonic on the fly, the average consumer is going to care more about the form factor. And even though 4K video is there, which I think is great, by the way, still captures from this have very, very good potential, because the FZ1000 showed exactly how great you could do in camera pulling stills from 4K video. I mean, really, you can shoot everything in 4K and worry about stills later, depending on your style of shooting. And that's a huge advantage you get here that you simply cannot do with the XAVCS 1080p video, which still has 50 megabit data rate, which is great. It's very high quality 1080p, but it just simply does not approach the 4K footage you're going to pull from the LX100 or the FZ1000 or the AX100 I'm filming on, or the GH4, or, you know, the list goes on and on. Once you step into 4K, you've got something else. But that's also an Achilles for this product, believe it or not, because even though I'm excited about it, and many of you that have actually made it through my 18-minute quick video are also excited about 4K, the average consumer that walks into Best Buy isn't necessarily that concerned with 4K. They don't necessarily have a 4K display in their household. So I think that's going to mean that the LX100, even though it's selling out now and it's really popular, I think the Mark III, as it gets less expensive, is going to continue to outsell it again, even though these really shouldn't but must be directly compared. So at the end of the day, personally, my pick, if I had to choose between one and I did not own the RX1, at least at first glance, I would probably still go with the Mark III, because the whole purpose of being, you know, that go-anywhere camera is form factor. And I hate to put myself in the class with the average consumer, but when I don't care about form factor, I bring out the bigger, higher quality cameras with the glass that I need. But for another consumer who doesn't have all the glass, even though I took the RX1 out of the picture, I'm just speaking from the perspective of not wanting other cameras, the LX100 is the king, because, I mean, this camera delivers what maybe a system would necessarily require. And that used to be the argument for the Mark III. It still very well is. It's just that now all of a sudden we've got a completely new option that in many ways sets the bar even higher than what we had already with the Mark III. Again, had these been the same size, there's no question Panasonic would have run away with this competition, even if the Panasonic still had the inferior viewfinder and display, because just having the features and, again, overall pricing, in my opinion, more favorable, considering 4K video is thrown into the mix and all of these other elements, they would have had a real head-to-head battle with Sony on this. I think because of the size difference, though, it's going to do them a disservice in the marketplace, because so many people are at a point where they don't think a camera, unless it's interchangeable, is going to give them quality, despite what the RX100 has proven to so many consumers. And that's why they will continue to rely on things like smartphones, where they can get a 16 megapixel sensor that is definitely impressive, 4K video capture, all of that nice stuff, but nowhere near the capability in the real world with sensor and lens pairings like we're seeing now in this revitalized point-and-shoot world, where camera makers all of a sudden care about what consumers have to say. So, again, I know this was supposed to be a quick comparison, but hopefully this helps those of you that are interested in choosing between these cameras. And I know I didn't go through the menus, but that's something that maybe I'll save for another video, believe it or not. And both are really clean, simple, straightforward, so that's not a problem for either of these cameras. In terms of charging, one thing I do want to point out is that this camera, the LX100, you charge externally. RX100 Mark III, like all Sony cameras, you'll be charging on body using micro USB. So some will find that an advantage, others a disadvantage. Again, a matter of personal preference. I think it's a good thing because you can just have like a power bank with you like you would for your cell phone, hook it up to this, and you're still shooting even when you don't necessarily have the juice on the battery. And again, both have, of course, replaceable batteries. You can buy third-party ones. They will work. I don't necessarily recommend it or endorse it, but it's always good to have some spares because both of these cameras do eat up on the batteries quite quickly. I can't comment on video overheating here yet. I haven't put it really to the test. The Mark III, no real overheat issues. Maybe that's why Sony hasn't integrated 4K. Maybe it's because they're just simply saving it for the next generation. But overall, either way, I can tell you right now, these are the best compact point-and-shoot cameras in their price range. And again, even though this isn't traditionally pocket-friendly, it's more jacket-friendly, I still think Panasonic has done an amazing job with the LX100 in the limited time I've spent with it. Look out for my full review of the LX100. That's right around the corner. And overall, again, both great cameras, both expensive, but you're getting high quality still and even higher quality video and control here in the more expensive LX100. So it's all a matter of what you're willing to carry, how much you care about 4K video and manual controls, because both have excellent build quality and fantastic sensors. And even though the sensor is larger here, there are still going to be many users that will argue that Sony's processing is better. I've already seen it online. It's all a matter of your personal experience and what you see in the images with your own eyes, frankly. You have a Venus processor from Panasonic driving this camera, the same one found in the GH4 FZ1000, and then you have the Bionz X driving, Bionz X processor driving the Mark III that's also in all of Sony's full frame. You know, their A7S is driven by that. So both manufacturers really putting their best foot possibly forward in a compact form factor rather. Of course, Panasonic has a little bit of an edge, about a quarter, business quarter, 3 months on Sony here, and I don't see Sony revising or refreshing the Mark III very soon. That's why I keep mentioning hopefully we'll see the RX1 with 4K, Wi-Fi, NFC, tilting screen, EVF, all that jazz, and maybe even a lower price, since we don't need it to be the world's, first full frame anymore, compact point and shoot, since it already was. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.